Comb your mullets, people. Crank up the hairband metal. It's time to go back to the 80s, folks. Let's do it. Yeah, folks, we are in the 80s for top horror movies. I'm going to do this just like I did the 90s and that. I'm going to list a bunch of horror movies that came out each year. I'm giving my top three. Again, I may not list every movie that came out that year horror-wise. And that's because I may not have seen it, or it's a movie I really, really don't like or don't care for. If there's a movie I don't list that you really like, let me know down below, leave a comment, and I'll check it out if I have not seen it. But we are in 1980. Yeah, I was 1 year old. Let's get on to it. The Shining came out that year. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. John Carpenter's The Fog came out that year. Cannibal Holocaust came out. I have a funny story about Cannibal Holocaust. The first time I seen it wasn't until like 98, 99. And back then, you couldn't get this movie at any of the video stores in the town I lived in. So at that time, I was looking for the goriest film I could find just to watch. The ones that people said are really extreme. So I bought this off of eBay. The VHS tape. Yes, VCRs, people. We had to use those back in the day. And I got the tape. Me, my buddy Rich, and another friend of ours, Bob, sat down and watched this film. And this movie is very graphic, and the violence looks very realistic. So realistic, in fact, that when the movie was released, the director got hauled into court because they thought he actually murdered the people on screen. Obviously he did not, and some of the actors showed up to defend the director, and he got let off. But that's how real the violence is in this film. And I remember sitting there watching it, and towards the end of the film, a guy gets a part of his anatomy cut off, and it looks real as hell, and they show it. They show everything. And my buddy Rich was sitting on a recliner eating a bowl of ice cream when this part happened. I looked over, and he turned white, and he looked like he was going to throw up all over the floor. He got up and walked out of the room. It was hilarious, and I'll never forget it. But that movie is very gory. If you've never seen it, it's worth checking out. Overall, the film's just okay, but the violence is definitely over the top and very realistic looking. The Changeling came out that year. Motel Hell. The original Friday the 13th came out. Prom Night, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. And Terror Train came out in 1980, also starring Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis had 3 horror films out that year. The Fog, Prom Night, and Terror Train. She was in a lot. Humanoids from the Deep. Maniac came out that year. He Knows You're Alone. Tom Hanks is briefly in that film. Christmas Evil. New Year's Evil. You can sense a pattern here, folks. Slashers really got underway in the 80s. Eaten Alive by Tobe Hooper. The Boogeyman and Effects, another slasher film. I would go 3, Friday the 13th. Number 2, John Carpenter's The Fog. And number 1, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. 81 gave us The Howling. An American Werewolf in London. We got 2 awesome werewolf films that year. The Return of Michael Myers and Halloween 2. Friday the 13th Part 2. This is when they started cranking them out because the first one was such a hit. Scanners came out in 81. Wolfen. Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse, which I like that film. It's cute. It's a cool little horror film. My Bloody Valentine. The Prowler, directed by Joseph Zito and Tom Savini on the effects. A really good, well-done TV movie, Dark Night of the Scarecrow, starring Larry Drake. Madman came out that year. Happy Birthday to Me. A Wes Craven film called Deadly Blessing. The Evil Dead. Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, starring Bruce Campbell. The Omen 3, The Final Conflict. The Beyond. Hell Night. Dead and Buried. Piranha 2, which really isn't that good, but it gave us James Cameron's first directing gig. Final Exam and Saturday the 14th, which is a spoof movie. It's not, I don't know if you consider it a horror movie, but whatever, I put it here. I would go number 3, Dark Night of the Scarecrow. If you've never seen it, it's a really well-done TV horror film. Number 2, I go to Howling. And number 1, American Werewolf in London. 82 gave us John Carpenter's The Thing. Poltergeist came out in 82. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which I really like Halloween 3. It took me a while to appreciate it, but I do. I love that film. Sadly, upon release, as we all know, it didn't do as well because people were expecting Michael Myers, and as we all know, you didn't get Michael Myers not until 88 with Halloween 4. Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D came out in 82. Creep Show. Cat People. The Slumber Party Massacre came out in 82. The Beast Within. Basket Case, which used to be, they used to play the shit out of that in USA Up All Night. Swamp Thing, directed by Wes Craven. The Entity. Silent Rage with Chuck Norris. Basically, it's like Chuck Norris fighting Michael Myers. Only Michael Myers isn't the killer, but it's kind of like that. And The House on Sorority Row. I would go 3, Poltergeist, 2, Creepshow, and John Carpenter's The Thing. That movie is an absolute one of the best horror films of all time. 83 gave us Cujo. It also gave us the sequel to Psycho, Psycho 2, which is a really good sequel. Sleepaway Camp, which you've never seen. The ending will surprise you. Videodrome. John Carpenter's Christine, a Stephen King adaptation. Jaws 3 in 3D. I did a review for that back in November, I think. The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken. Twilight Zone the movie. And Amityville 3 in 3D. This is when the 3D craze kicked up in the 80s. Thank God it went way fast. Number 3, I go with The Dead Zone. Number 2, Psycho 2. And number 1, John Carpenter's Christine. On 84. 84 gave us A Nightmare on Elm Street. Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, which is my favorite of the Friday the 13th franchise. Children of the Corn. That's right, Malachi. Night of the Comet. Gremlins, which, yes, I am listing it here under horror. Firestarter, the movie that Carpenter was fired off of because of the Thing bombing, which is unfathomable now to me. The Company of Wolves. Chud, a really cool creature feature. Silent Night, Deadly Night. The Toxic Avenger. Razorback, another movie used to show the shit out of on USA Up All Night. I'm going to say The Terminator. I'm not going to list it in my top 3. It's an awesome movie. It's sci-fi action, but you could also say it's also a slasher film. I'm just throwing that in as an addendum. And The Hills Have Eyes 2, which is really not a good film. Number 3, I go with Gremlins. Number 2, Friday the 13th, Part 4. And number 1, A Nightmare on Elm Street. 1985 gave us Reanimator. George Romero's Day of the Dead, which I just did a review for last week. The Return of the Living Dead came out in 85. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which it's an okay movie. I'm not a huge fan of that sequel. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. Another sequel that's not that good. Demons. House. Life Force, Tobe Hooper's big-budget vampire space epic. The Stuff. Silver Bullet. Cat's Eye. Howling 2, which I've read all 3 novels, the Howling novels. Why they didn't follow the novels for the sequels, I do not know. All they did was make shit sequel after shit sequel, but the Howling 2 came out that year. Transylvania's 65000 and The Awesome Fright Night. I would go number 3, Return of the Living Dead. Number 2, Fright Night. And number 1, George Romero's Day of the Dead. On 86, we got The Fly that year. Cronenberg's The Fly. April Fool's Day, which Scream Factory just came out with a really cool Blu-ray for that. Night of the Creeps. Really cool little horror film starring Tom Atkins. Critters. We got our first Critters entry. From Beyond. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, which is one of the better sequels. Psycho 3. Anthony Perkins directed that one. Invaders from Mars. Rawhead Rex. Vamp. Maximum Overdrive, Stephen King's coke-fueled directorial debut. He even says he was coked up the whole time. It's not just me saying that. Poltergeist 2. Terror Vision, which I remember seeing on TV a lot back then. Deadly Friend. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. The Hitcher. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer with Michael Rooker. Chopping Mall. Troll. Sorority House Massacre. I would go 3, Night of the Creeps. Number 2, The Hitcher. And number 1, Cronenberg's The Fly. On 87, gave us Evil Dead, Dead by Dawn, which really gave, this is the movie gives Ash J. Williams. This is when Ash became Ash in this film. It's batshit crazy, but it's glorious. The first Hellraiser film, directed by Clive Barker. John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. The Lost Boys. The Monster Squad. Wolfman's Got Nards. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Dream Warriors. Probably it's the best sequel out of the original series. The Gate. Creepshow 2. Howling 3. The Marsupials. Oh my god, what a shit fest. The Hidden. The Hidden's a really cool sci-fi action movie. House 2. Predator came out that year, but I'm going to leave it off. That's more of an action movie. The Stepfather. Angel Heart. Dolls. Jaws the Revenge. Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. What is it? Trash Day. I think I fucked up that reference, but that's all right. Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, number 3. Number 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. And number 1, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. 1988 gave us Hellraiser 2, Hellbound. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I'm not a really big fan of that film. I've seen it. My buddy Chuck really likes that film, though. Child's Play, the original. Pumpkinhead, directed by the great Stan Winston. Phantasm 2, Don Coscarelli came back to give us a sequel. Universal gave him a bigger budget, and it's a damn good sequel. Maniac Cop, Friday 13th, Part 7, A New Blood. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. I don't really care for that movie. Night of the Demons, The Serpent and the Rainbow. John Carpenter's They Live. Howling 4, which they continue with the shittiness. Critters 2, directed by Mick Garris. A cool little witchcraft film called Spellbinder. I did a review for that a couple months ago. Halloween 4, Michael Myers made his return in 88. The Blob remake. Waxwork, which is a cool little horror film. Return of the Living Dead 2. Dead Heat. Dead Ringers. Poltergeist 3. Scarecrows. Sleepaway Camp 2. Pulse. The Unholy. The Nest, which is a movie about cockroaches. Jack's Back. It's a Jack the Ripper movie set in present time, or 88, with James Spader. It's actually a cool little film. It's not the greatest, but it's interesting. And Fright Night 2, which I will contend is a damn good sequel and does not get talked about enough. Anyway, number 3 goes to the Blob remake. Cool little horror film. Check it out if you've never seen it. Pumpkinhead. Goddamn, I love the design of that creature in that movie. And John Carpenter's They Live comes in at number 1. All right, the last of the decade. 89, we got Wes Craven's Shocker. Friday 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, which is a shit sandwich. Unfortunately, high hopes for that movie, and there's only 2 good parts in the whole freaking movie. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. That was a rush production, and it shows when you watch the film. Pet Sematary came out in 89. Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. I don't like that movie. Warlock with Julian Sands. Our first of 2 aquatic horror films in Leviathan. Sleepaway Camp 3 came out that year. Deep Star 6, directed by Sean Cunningham. Intruder, our first entry in the Puppet Master series. Chud 2, which sucks. Skip that one. Stepfather 2. Howling 5. Yes, they have not improved on that. Sundown with Bruce Campbell. And Bride of Reanimator. I would go 3, Leviathan. I like Deep Star 6 as well. I think Leviathan's a little bit better. I'd go with number 2 with Warlock. I know I'd probably surprise some people. And number 1, Pet Sematary. I love the Halloween franchise. And I even can watch Halloween 5. It's not shitty like Friday the 13th Part 8, but you can tell it's a rush production, and some of the story elements they introduced kind of don't make any goddamn sense, but that's my list for the 80s and horror. Leave a comment down below if there's a movie I left off. Tell me I'm nuts, whatever you want. Hit the thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe here, join me. I try to upload 3 or 4 times a week. Last week I think I did 5. I went 5 for 5 last week. But yeah, that's it for me. I'll be back with the best movies of the 80s, or my favorite movies of the 80s. And I hope you all take care of yourselves, stay safe, laugh a little, and I'll be back soon. Thanks.